meta right now in the Inara.
So what will this final ban be? Lots of top laners still open and available. Still got Varus as well. All of the junglers really on the table. Wukong taken off the board. So let's see where JDG go to. Still things like Varus. We've still got Gwen Rumble. We've still got plenty of different picks that can be picked up. Lots of things that are typically seen as quite strong in the meta. Let's see which one it is that JDG elects for.
Jungler pick early makes a lot of sense, you know, or just go with the good old classic. It feels like Rumble has been a B1 option ever since we started the Demacia Cup almost 9 to 10 months ago. Xiaoxu has been a great player on this champion specifically, both in his time on RNG as well as here on JDG.
And I wonder if this just means that Breathe opts into a sort of an Ornn and sort of defaults back to some of those stabilizing laning picks, and then we can look to put a bit more stock in a carry for Tian, a carry for Xiaoxu. However, this Aurora, the frequent answer to a Rumble, you know, is something that we saw a lot from IG, where they would Pioneer putting the Shy on the Aurora and seeing what he could do with it. But, you know, this is a great flex pick, and I love it on red side, where you don't have to reveal this flex until the final stage of the draft. So you're now a little bit hesitant to pick something melee in the mid lane as well, in case that Aurora goes there.
We have not seen Aurora be played by Breathe in the playoffs so far this season, or so far, you know, over these past 2 series that they've played. Xiaohu has played it once, and it's going to be matched at least alongside Crisp's Alistar, classic engaged champion, one of his most played throughout his competitive career. Now, as you mentioned, Root, a big counter to Rumble these days are these tanks with the recent nerfs that have come through, so I would not be surprised to see Breathe lock one of those in, as JDG are going all out with their full engage, full wombo composition. That's an Orianna Pantheon locked in 2-3.
Yeah, and Xun Pantheon has been one of those picks that does take over games very frequently, and I'd like to see that happen in game number 1 for JDG. I think that they've got the tools to be able to make that happen. For Weibo, though, they've got this also very dive-centric composition. The Aurora can get to your backline now with a Jarvan and an Alistar, especially up against double immobile carries in their solo lanes. JDG going to have to be very fearful for that Cataclysm, and it's a question of what Weibo looks to round out this Circles composition with. We've got Cataclysm on one side, we've got the Between Worlds on another, the massive double knockup that Alistar can provide. You know, looking at ADs to try and complement that, maybe Corki comes through, Ezreal. We've got plenty of things that Weibo can look toward, and you know, things even still like the Varus that are completely left open could still just come in to slot into this composition.
Still a lot of options, which is why maybe these teams are taking a little bit more time here in this second ban phase as well. Light Sivir being taken off the board here, as of course we're still looking for 80 carries in both of these teams' compositions. Light and Peyz, obviously 2 very different routes to get to this point. Light's been with Weibo for the last couple of splits, and Peyz moving over from Gen G down here. Both very influential and impactful as to what they can bring to their respective teams. See a Poppy Pit takeaway actually for Zhuo at support. Makes sense, as it's something that kind of all the players on Weibo kind of don't want to deal with in general.
Yeah, it's a good ban versus the Alistar versus the Jarvan. I mean, I'm looking at AD carries here that we could still take. I mean, even a Jinx. I mean, maybe in the first round isn't what we're going to see in a game 1 of this Fearless, but does synergize quite nicely with their composition. And for Light in particular as well is something that we've seen him take very frequently. Now, as we look at sort of something a little bit more split wide, maybe we're going to see this more traditional marksman in a Varus come through, which again I still just think is going to slot in quite nicely. But if they're going to combo that hammer home dive with dive, it's also a bit of a denial pick as well. Taking it away from Peyz gives him the lack of option now to follow the Pantheon in.
Yeah, full dive here for Weibo, at least so far. We'll see exactly what they want to lock in with one of their final solo laners on the 5th pick. And now JDG have a big question. What do they want to go with exactly? Do you take the Nautilus away from the Kai'Sa as, you know, being one of the typical picks that you would pair alongside that champion? It looks like, at least for now, doing a little bit more high damage here with the Corki pickup.
So denying things for Weibo, not necessarily a point, but getting it removed from Fearless so that we don't see Crisp on it in later matches, definitely something to keep our eyes on. This is now when Weibo have to reveal their flex. Is this Aurora going top? Is it going into the mid lane? And for Weibo, it's that decision. Are we okay with sending a Galio, it seems in this case, into the Ori? And they absolutely are. I mean, again, big circles, big dive. Weibo are going forward, and there's nothing really in this JDG arsenal to stop that from happening.
see that Galio getting locked in. Now there's a little bit of questions about where this pick would go. I would imagine they're going to swap these solo laners at some point, but the Galio into the Orianna is a perfectly fine matchup as well. And overall, Weibo have a very easy to execute and a very clear picture of what their composition wants to do, which is to go all the way in. JDG have some nice tools to disengage, but overall, I feel like Weibo definitely have the easier goal or easier job to do with the champions that they have as 5.
Absolutely. If they can get on top of Peyz, then the game is really, really straightforward. I mean, getting on top of Rumble and Orianna, it's about burning those flashes early, making sure that they are the focus point pre-level 6, and then when you hit that level 6 marker, let's start Cataclysm, right? Let's just start layering down these immovable objects and really find those kills nice and early. Especially Jarv and Galio, even if Corki's got Valkyrie, even if he's got Flash, that can be so difficult to try to get away from. If you get knocked up, you're already in a world of hurt anyway. You Valkyrie away from the knockup, then you get Cataclysm, then you have to Flash, and if you don't have Flash, then your combo's just completely useless anyway. So there's a lot of tools that are available for Weibo here to make sure that the life of JDG is miserable. And looking at the supports that they could have taken, you know, things like Braum, Renata, they were all still open, these disengaged supports that can very frequently help you out. It wasn't like Weibo were hiding what their composition was going to do. They were very clear, very apparent with it. And it feels like they've not really read it too well as JDG. Unless they're going to be able to pick their way through the early game, they're going to struggle.
Well, the stage has been set. A rematch of that fateful Gauntlet series from over a year ago. Down in the lower quarterfinals of the LPL 2025 Split 3. JDG taking on Weibo. Starting right now. See the crowd in Shenzhen waiting to fully erupt. Seems like both the fans know that we might be here for a while, dude.
Yeah, I would hope so, honestly. This is one of those series, and honestly, with the majority of series that we've seen so far in the LPL playoffs at this stage, we're expecting more than at the very least 3 games. I think 4 is pretty much a given. 5 is the blessing that we're after.
And you know, that's something that JDG have done quite a lot so far here in the playoffs. Have taken series to 5 games both times. Both in the upper and the lower bracket. Of course, were sent down to the lower by BLG via reverse sweep, and then just won 5 games against Edward Gaming, the representative out of Group Nirvana. So you could argue whether there's positive or negative momentum associated with barely beating the Group Nirvana team, but overall, still winning 2 straight versus Weibo coming off of a 3-1 loss to TS. Maybe has them feeling a little bit better about things.
Yeah, and I mean, something that we didn't actually, or that I want to keep a track of here, I think it's a good point that these 2 teams have had different routes in so far, but the fact that we just saw a leash come through in our grand year of 2025 Grapes feels a little bit like, yeah, like Jarvan can clear his jungle. This isn't Janna jungle that we've got to try to clear and help out with, but at the minute, JDG doing very well in this bot lane because they're able to get priority over these bot brushes. And we talk about level 1 Alistar all the time, but definitely something that is being punished here by the JDG bot side.
Both supports already have to blow their flash. Also, you see that Breathe is piloting this Aurora, so a range versus melee matchup on both sides of things, but you can clearly see at the moment Breathe getting the better of Xiaoxu at this point, whereas Xiaohu going to be able to play a champion that he's pretty familiar with and one that can have some pretty high global impact in the Galio.
Yeah, and I mean, we just got to see some of the win rates. And I talked about Jun's Pantheon being able to frequently take over games. As his overall score on it, yeah, good flash from Xiaohu there. Needs to flash the dissonance damage in the queue as well. Overall win rate for Jun this split on the Pantheon was 1 and 5, so maybe not quite as important or as impactful as I'd have first thought.
Wow. I feel like this is something that he's played pretty well on, but actually one of those games was a loss in the playoffs, I believe, and he did pretty well on the Pantheon. It was just an unfortunate one, I believe, against EDG in game number 1 of that series. Hey, while we have a little bit of time, I want to give a quick shout out to ProDiff, our sponsor here on LPL English, where you can get some tips and tricks from some of the best in the ERLs, the NACL, and of course the LTA. You can use code LPL10 to save 10% on prodiff.gg. Thank you so much to ProDiff for being a sponsor here at LPL English.
You can see how to take trades quite like Peyz down on the sport side. He's playing this incredibly well. Landing Frostbomb on both targets here, especially after Crisp has already gone in. Really solid stuff, and now just through sheer laning prowess and the fact that Jun is pathing towards this bot side, you can see Light has to sacrifice a little bit on this bot wave, and now Scout in trouble in the mid lane.
Remember, Xiaohu doesn't have his flash, but Scout does, but not going to be able to flash that. The EQ combo comes in from Tian. Finally, Scout will be able to use that summoner spell, but not before being taken below 200 HP. So nice gank here for Weibo. So it looks like Scout's actually going to stick around for a little bit. Sure, the
Jun was out of the brush there. Forward. So they should know that he's here. Yes, Rose walked up as well, but this is overall a fairly decent run of plays for JDG. Able to get rid of some of that gold on Light. He's now pushed a little bit further behind the curve. He goes back to base, picks up a Cull and a Dagger, which is the greatest of pickups in terms of combat power. I think fortunately he's playing versus a Corki, so picked up a Tier and a Dagger, so we're not exactly worried about his fighting presence too much at the minute.
Yeah, both of these bot lanes not picked for their laning phases. The Corki and the Kai'Sa definitely want to scale a little bit later on into this one. I wonder if that means less of a focus on the grubs that are going to come up in about 3 minutes, or maybe more of a focus with lane swaps maybe imminent in the next couple of minutes time over these next few waves.
I would say that Corki actually typically a pretty strong laner, and I think picked specifically into the Kai'Sa is to do pretty much what we've seen Peyz do already, to kind of bully around this bot lane, and you can see him stepping forward, using that Gatling gun over the wave to try to poke out Light and try and weave in these auto attacks as well. Now this wave in honestly a pretty dire position. JDG can look to try and freeze this. Really make sure that Light and Crisp aren't in a good spot, and I think that that's when we're going to start to see this lane swap start to come through, because at the minute Light and Crisp, they're homeless. They can't step up to this wave because they lose the 2v2. So they need to get swapped out of this, or at least bailed out by a little bit of presence from Tian. But we can see he's on the top side. He's nowhere near ready for this, so it's just going to be Light being denied more and more gold.
A reset finally coming in for Tian, but it's going to be a couple more waves of misery here for Light and Crisp, as you can definitely see the control that JDG's bot lane have been able to implement here in the 2v2. You know, an area of the map that we thought, Rude, was going to be pretty important in terms of deciding the series. Obviously, Peyz has really had some high-level performances, but we're questioning what Zhuo can do, and the same thing can be said for the bot lane of Weibo. Right now, it's Peyz and Zhuo getting the better.
Yeah, and you got to see as soon as they realized that Light's gone back to base, they're immediately going to push this out, find a free recall effectively so that they don't miss out on anything. They can go back, pick up just a little bit more gold, maybe a longsword, maybe something to up their trading power. Alternatively, helps Jun out in this bot side jungle.
Oh, Zhuo face checks that brush. Flag and drag goes onto the Nautilus, but kind of follow up after that, as it seems like neither team really want to go for that full 4v4. We also saw ultimates traded on the top side of the map. It seems like that lane swap is what at least JDG are looking for, with resets coming through from both Peyz and Xiaoxu.
Yeah, so Peyz gives up his free recall. He's going to miss some minions down on that bot side, but you can see that they've instigated a lane swap, right, with Peyz walking out to that top side. Gives Xiaoxu a little bit of free time as well. And I do want to quickly call out something that we saw in those rune choices, especially for Peyz here. Went for Jack of all trades, meaning that he wants to work his way up to 10 stacks of different statistics really early on. Doing a pretty good job at that for the time being. Has already reached that 5 break point with a little bit of Omnivamp that you get from the Blade. Tier giving you mana, health, AD, and attack speed. He's may look like he's window shopping, but he's doing it for the Jota procs.
Okay, well, as somebody who plays ADC quite often, maybe plays some jack of all trades, I'll hold my thought right here. It looks like Xiaoxu's gonna get dove 4 members strong by the side of Weibo. That guy had no chance, as Crisp is barely able to survive with one more tower shot. That's first blood to Weibo Gaming.
And that's a really solid play, and what does it cost them? A few plates on this top side, so gold into Peyz, gold away from the Rumble. But honestly, this is, again, JDG in a position where they're probably happy enough with this trade. We could argue that Xiaoxu shouldn't have been in that spot in the first place. He should know that this is his time to get dove. But JDG getting gold onto Peyz, where he's actually feeling pretty confident and feeling pretty far ahead of the curve, is something that we're not be too worried about necessarily. This is what I'm more worried about, the fact that Tian's able to walk in, steal away some jungle camps on the bot side.
Yeah, able to a small advantage back. Obviously, the CS department's rather even, but because Tian was able to pick up that first kill, now ahead in the gold department, right as the grubs spawn. But it's going to be JDG to get there first. Makes sense because they were the bot lane to obviously have pressure on that top side of the map. Meanwhile, Tian has not actually started up this Cloud Dragon yet. Is JDG kind of in a better position despite losing that kill off the dive?
Especially with these, like you say, with these grubs going down as well. They will be traded for this dragon, but I think it's too much. They're not set up. They'll be face checking into darkness, and they've still got Xiaohu TP available, so he can sort of make a play down onto the spot side if they were to try to contest. But I mean, looking across the board at the gold, it's still very even. That first blood gold has been largely neutralized by the fact that the bot laners are pretty far ahead. Now, it is worth mentioning that it's a 300 gold for the supports, which in the grand scheme of things, we do not care about whatsoever, so it's only really a 200 gold lead that they've got to speak of, and the fact that Light is now getting to effectively free farm versus the Orianna in the mid lane is pretty decent for Weibo. But we should talk a little bit about what this means, right? We've got a pretty slow-paced early game. We've had this one kill come through in the first 9 minutes. Who does this favour? Who are we happy with this going for? And honestly, looking at the scaling on these sides, I will always look at a Kai'Sa and think that you are going to be able to pop up and to take over in the late game, especially when their composition is executable very, very easily. There's not a lot that's stopping the Kai'Sa from going in and absolutely destroying you, right? We've got a point-and-click CC from Xiaohu, from Jun, but that's really about it. Getting away from a shockwave and making sure that that doesn't hit you should be very simple on a Kai'Sa. Same to be said for things like the Rumble Equalizer. We don't expect those to be pretty big triggers that can take down Light. And looking at this game, and my prediction for JDG, thinking that they might be able to come out on top in the series, but game number 1 for me, the longer this game goes, is going to be much, much easier for Weibo to get this game off the ground.
Especially because while there's a lot of things that, or there's not a lot of things I should say, that actually kind of take away what a Kai'Sa can do. A lot of enablers on Weibo's side as well. You have the Jarvan, you have the Alistar, even the Galio going in with that hero's entrance. Light can kind of jump on top of anybody that gets engaged on by one of those free threats. And then, by the way, you have a full AP Aurora that's going to be able to do a lot of damage as well as the game progresses. Yeah. So, yeah, overall, Weibo's team fighting definitely looks very, very strong. And JDG, on the other hand, they have some good pieces, but again, we talked about at the start of the draft, it's Weibo who really have the agency in terms of starting fights, and the fact that they're even at this point of the game is a very good sign.
And what I will say as well is that looking at the flashes that we saw burned earlier, right? Scout got off scot-free. He had his flash burned at level 3, level 4. Tian will have dinged level 6, but there was no angle onto the Orianna that they were able to find. So it's about burning these flashes for Weibo. That's the flip side of this coin, is that yes, they can have those go buttons, but when there are flashes available, that Cataclysm is going to be rendered useless pretty quickly. It's about making sure that they can burn these summoner spells nice and early. And Xiaoxu down on this bot side, he has his still, but not being a good spot.
Yeah, not for long.
Burnt, flash burned. Well, now's the time. 5 minutes. Yep. Start the timer.
Xiaoxu has been the target of a lot of focus by Weibo, at least so far. See that kind of reflecting in terms of how their resources are currently allocated. As you mentioned, the top side of the map for Weibo, currently the ones in the lead in terms of gold, where JDG have advantages, albeit very small, in other areas. And if you have a little bit of a break in time, Rude, going back to what Peyz has building right now, of course, working for that Triforce, like, what other items are we looking at here? Is there, when you have this rune, the Jack of all trades, do you sometimes go like, oh, like I have to build AP here, I have to build MR here, or is it kind of just building what you would normally build anyway?
I mean, you can kind of get away with building, the way to get 10 stats is actually pretty easy for most classes. I would say that AD carry is typically one of the harder positions to do it, but with Trinity Force you get so many anyway. And then things like a Crit Cloak are something that you have to consider as well, that just give you that pretty easy, short amount of stats that you can get. Sorry, just watching Scout wail away at a plate there. And then it depends what boots you go as well. If you end up picking up some movement speed, that gets you an extra stat. If you go for a movement speed defensive boot, that gives you another stat as well. So you can actually get up to 10 without too much difficulty on the majority of carries, especially like a Corki who's not reliant on Berserker boots. Go for something that's defensive. I think that this game, things like Merc Treads, things like Plated Steel Caps, not awful, gives you that magic resist, gives you that armor, whichever way you go for it. You do end up breaking your way up there quite quickly.
Okay, so we're not going like Zanya's third item or something crazy.
I hope not. I
hope not. Good. That's good to hear, because
we don't need to cook that hard.
Peyz got to do a lot of damage in this game, and
he does.
That'd be sad.
Well, maybe breathe who's the one who's under fire. As 4 people from JDG walking down to this bot side, but looks like there's enough people from Weibo that are just sniffing around and saying, actually guys, this isn't the dive you think it is.
Especially with Breathe both having ultimate and flash, just a lot of mobility. You can zip and zap away from different forms of engage that JDG have. It would be a little bit of a difficult dive to go for, and so it looks like we're going to back away. Very quiet early game so far. I've seen the LPL admin on our Twitter account continuously be mad that like, oh, like what happened to this LPL? There's only 1 kill. We're getting another one of those experiences. So whoever's on the socials team today might have another tweet up in that deck, but I think we're going to get some fighting soon. Maybe around this dragon that's about to spawn.
Yeah, 5 seconds away, and it will be second Drake for Weibo. Recalls from Scout on that top side. He has got teleport, so it'll be very indicative of where he TPs to. It's into the mid lane. So expectation is that JDG want to fight for this dragon, and it looks like Weibo do too.
Starting initiative, immediately dredge line on to Chris. The dragon is below 2k. Shun's able to get in there and smite it down. That's a stolen Infernal Dragon for JD Gaming, and Weibo can't do anything about it.
We do a little bit of the flipping here in the LPL, and it's JDG that come out on top. Shun walks in, Q Smite, taking things away as a Pantheon. Very, very straightforward and very well executed by JDG. They walk in, they take the objective, they walk out, and they don't get engaged on.
Thanks for the leash, buddy. As Shun's able to secure that one. The Q Smite combo is a pretty unbeatable one against anything that Jarvan has in his kit, obviously. So, well done by JDG. They use a teleport, but it's very much worth it as it helps, keep this game alive. Weibo getting off to a 2-dragon lead would have been a pretty bad sign.
Yeah, especially with the way that this composition from Weibo can just force onto objectives, onto fights. They spot a target, they should look to try to take them out. But once again, what I want to draw our attention to are those TP timers, right? Xiaoxu rather, TP'd up to that top side, Scout TP'd into the mid lane just beforehand. So both of the solo laners from JDG now without their teleports, whereas Xiaohu is going to have his up pretty quickly. A bit of a trade here down on the bot side, but what I'm looking at from Weibo is try to punish Xiaoxu. He's got no flash on this rumble. They should be looking to capitalize on that, and I don't know that I've seen Tian actually look for an ulti yet.
They're going to punish Xiaohu instead, who gets caught trying to defend a control ward against Light and Tian. That's a big kill for this Kai'Sa, who has been put rather behind in the CS department, but now is 1-0-1.
Yeah, and with that kill, we've pretty much given the gold lead right back to Light. I think that this is the best place for Weibo to put their gold. I think that there's a lot of onus on Light in this game. Looking at the damage that they've got on this composition. Yes, we've got an Aurora. Yes, we've got a Jarvan Galio sort of hybrid bruiser tank damage thing that they're going to be doing. But it's all about Light. It's all about him and what he can perform, or how he can perform in this game. Set him up. Let's look for gold onto the Kai'Sa, and then hopefully he should be able to carry them through.
Another mistake that we've seen from Zhuo, a player that, again, brought onto this JDG team halfway through Split 3, and a very similar playstyle from what we've seen from him throughout the year. Of course, started off on LNG, is permanently on the aggressive side of things, and we've seen that come back to punish him quite often, and that's something that we're looking to see remedied a little bit towards the back half of the season if we want JDG to have some more success.
Yeah, I do think that Zhuo's had a pretty stinky split, just without being too crude about it. The performances that we've seen from him on this JDG roster have been pretty off base with what this JDG composition or composition of players are expected to accomplish. Even just that, things like clearing a control ward there when you don't see what's in that tri-brush. It's pretty rough. If you can't step up to go put a ward in that tri-brush, it means you can't step up to clear it. With nobody in there, and it's just these small mistakes which, whilst it's not cost JDG the game by any means, it just lost them so much tempo on that top side. They had to cede all pressure up there. Means that there's a little bit more gold put into the Kai'Sa, some more into the Jarvan, and all of a sudden you can see that gold lead from before that kill happened, it was dead even, to now being a 1k gold lead that's just slowly accelerating. And off of only 300 gold going their way, it has its consequences.
It's not too much, but again, will continue to stack up if things don't change in terms of how the game state is currently functioning, especially because the easy engage tools that the Weibo are going to have, and now that they have some sort of lead, it just becomes easier for them to start these fights, even more than it was just a couple of minutes ago, as you mentioned. We have this next Chemtech Dragon spawning in about 90 seconds. Some solo laners battling it out on the top side. Surely a rotation down towards that pit is going to be happening in the near future.
Yeah, and you'd like to think that down in that bot lane is the crucial point, as I do want to quickly highlight that, Xiaoxu once again had no flash, didn't get punished for it this time though, as that is now back up and available. Looking at the summoner spells on Weibo as well, everybody has flash except for Tian, who's is coming up in about 10-15 seconds time. Looks like Xiaoxu, he's the focus once again. He's been put a little bit in the mud by Weibo so far this game, and it looks like that's not going to stop anytime soon.
Man, if they attempted these games like 2 minutes earlier, maybe it would have been a little easier. But now he has flash again, so it's just like, okay, we burned the flash, but didn't use anything off, didn't do anything off of it, and so he's gonna be just fine.
So yeah, you would expect now, especially with that big overload up to the top side that actually didn't really yield any fruit. This is going to give some free time to scout down in the bot lane. They put 3 people on the top side as Weibo and lose out on this first turret of the game that goes down in favor of JDG for a lost play on the top side. Looks like Weibo trying to make a play this time around that didn't quite work out. They might be looking to punish though.
Yeah, Scout does have his flash, but looks like Weibo wanted to try to make him pay for taking that bot lane tier 1 for the first turret of the game. Not going to happen though, as he will be able to escape with his phase rush right as the dragon spawns. We see everybody from both squads making their way towards this pit. 2-1 in terms of the dragon lead would be very impactful for Weibo as they're the ones to start it off.
Yeah, they do have Pantheon ulti to get in there a little bit quicker, so when Zhuo walks around this corner, broaches it and sees how high HP it is or how low, might start to get in there.
Get in there quick. No, it's too late. Tian and Weibo are going to secure this dragon. The question is, will they go for more? Chris flashes in for a 2-man pulverize, and after almost 20 minutes, the LPL gods have granted us a team fight. It's a Cataclysm under 2. Zhuo dangerously low and already a 1-for-0 in favor of JD Gaming. As Xiaoxu yeets himself straight into the enemy jungle and picks himself up a kill on the breathe. It's 3-0 in favor of JD Gaming with Xiaoxu next to follow. He has the blast cone to safety as Weibo collapsed after picking up the Drake.
It's a Gigachad Rumble performance from Xiaoxu there. He puts the equalizer down, flashes onto the right side of the blast cone, and cooks Weibo in their own jungle. Yes, they get away with the dragon, but they lose 3. They will lose the Atacon. That's a monster fight from JDG, and in particular the top laner as well. The hook early from Zhuo here. Good flash to buy space, but Crisp goes in a little too far. The backline getting cooked by the equalizer. Breathe and Light barely able to really contribute to this. Light uses his ult to do nothing. And then watch this blast cone. Flash from Breathe. Xiaoxu, the second that cone gets hit, he flashes on top of it to make sure that he can take down Breathe without really any recompense. Light able to, force his way out of there using his supercharge and the way to get out to safety, but Weibo will be feeling a little bit more hard done by the fact that they couldn't execute on their own team fight.
And again, Weibo's the team that is supposed to be the one that's really good at starting engages, but JDG did a great job using the tools in their kits to deny any sort of those start fight initiations. Xiaohu got his hero's entrance blocked and cancelled by Shun just jumping in and stunning him with his W, and that was a big cooldown that was not utilized in that last fight. Couldn't be coordinated with the Cataclysm of Tian. Could have resulted in a massive swing, and that's a credit here for Shun, who didn't do a ton of damage in that fight, but definitely was very impactful in terms of the denying that he was able to accomplish.
And now a little bit of a wake-up call for Weibo Gaming, right? That this isn't just going to be plug and play, that actually JDG know how Weibo need to play this, as Peyz stepping forward here. Has got his friends by his side, though.
Ooh, crisp. That spellbook goes very useful as he's able to get away from that dredge line. Could have meant an ultimate pop or worse. As the equalizer comes over from Xiaoxu just to generate some pressure here on this mid lane tier 1. Going to be very close to going down with 3 grubs in the hands of JDG, but not going to be able to fully take it out. Crisp is looking aggressively to make sure that Peyz doesn't go too far.
And importantly, it's about Scout. It's about making sure that he is getting gold in the side lane. That tier 1 turret mid on top side is their prize. This is the second turret that Scout has taken. That's 2 kills worth of gold that have been funneled into the JD Gaming mid laner, and especially with the first brick gold as well. A little bit extra going in there. This story of these mid laners, in these playoff series has actually been dominated by Xiaohu. He's the player who frequently gets the better of Scout in those big ticket matches. In game number 1 though, JDG, they're stopping that. They're saying that we are putting the gold onto Scout and giving him the tools to carry.
And this is, a big resurgence to form potentially for Scout at a critical time in JD Gaming season. So many times we have been critical of this player, Rude, and it's not because we hate him or anything like that. It's just we expect so much out of a guy that's won a world championship and has been at the top of the LPL mid lane pool for the past decade at this point. And to see him have some of these underperformances, specifically being caught out in side lanes, has been a big concern for us. And so seeing him be able to take those 2 towers for free, be level 15 at 23 minutes with 2.5 completed items is a great sign for the start of this series.
And I will say this is the exact timing in which we usually see our laners get caught, these mid laners rather, get caught on sides. And so far that has not happened. It's a quintessential point of Xiaohu as well, as we do see that JDG now finally able to corral their forces into the mid lane. Scout comes in, shows a bit of face, and that mid lane tier 1 turret in the outer sweep. Those turrets have been secured by JDG, and you know, for Weibo, it just feels like they're a little bit behind on, you know, anything, that they're not too sure how to go about taking these fights. Looking at those summoner spells once again, Scout still has flash, Peyz still has flash. Xiaoxu will be back up and ready by the time that this dragon spawns. And I just fear for how they can expect to take a team fight when they are so hemmed in being able, or so reliant on needing flashes to be down, but they're not making the plays to burn flashes.
Yeah, they've got to be very proactive over these next 20 seconds. Maybe try to burn one of those summoner spells early. And even if that doesn't happen, around a dragon fight, they got to be able to pick the fight that they want on their own terms. A little bit differently than what happened last time around, where JDG went 3-0 a little over 5 minutes ago. We'll see if that ends up being the case, as the dragon has now spawned. Weibo once again have inner workings to the pit, but Xiaoxu's going to come in with that second completed item in the Bloodletter's Curse straight to the mid lane and make sure that this is an even fight, 5v5.
Yeah, but trying to walk into this is even more difficult almost for Weibo, because it's so telegraphed where their engage is going to come from. You'll see now that Xiaohu probably going to play a little bit of an off angle so that he doesn't get interrupted by any form of CC. Breathe looking for a flank, but Xiaoxu's marking this, and 4K on the dragon. This isn't going down too slowly.
Yeah, Tian's gonna have to pull the trigger soon if they want to try to steal this one away. Another Q smite is beautifully executed, and Shun will secure the second dragon of the game for JD Gaming. Dro goes in once again with that dredge line, but the headbutt pull from Chris does not connect. Now the equalizer comes on, and JDG can smell blood in the water as Weibo could be collapsed upon. Finally, the EQ comes in from Tian, not utilizing that Cataclysm just yet. He won't even be able to create the terrain before going down as Peyz picks up the kill. Crisp is next to follow, and it's an all-out slaughter for now, until Light finally picks up one, then two with the killer instinct before the shockwave from Scout will finish the job. It is a 5-for-2 ace for Weibo after giving, or for JDG I should say, as all of Weibo are done.
And you can see that this game hems on the fact that Light needs to be able to do damage. He needs his carry to be able to step up. But they can't. We're looking at Tian, we're looking at Xiaohu, and they just can't do the work. They can't buy the space, they can't buy the time. Breathe uses the in-between worlds here, and this is the cue. This is when Crisp, Tian, Xiaohu, they need to engage, they need to go. But now Breathe, he's left on his own out in front here, so he has to burn his flash to get out to safety. With no ulti, he can't get out of danger. And then as soon as this attempted re-engage from Xiaohu comes in, Tian knocked up by the depth charge, rooted by a hook, and before he can even land, he's taken down. The hero's entrance does a good job, and you know there's a triple knock up there as well. But Light, unfortunately, just not in the same position as his carries. He's dealing with the rumble, and it's just that mismatched timing. You can see that Scout knows exactly what it is that he needs to do. As long as he saves his shockwave for when the Kai'Sa goes in, there's no damage to follow.
The silver lining for Weibo is that Light was able to pick up a double kill at the end of things, and now does have that third item in the Terminus. Gets you a little bit of extra resistances, gets you a little bit of a higher ability to penetrate through some of the front line that JDG have. But time's running out now for Weibo's composition. At least if JDG can continue the snowball. They've won 2 team fights in a row. Baron is now available, and that's definitely going to be their target, as it seems like every time they start to go for an objective, Weibo have trouble trying to deal with it.
And yeah, I mean, when they aren't starting, it is even more difficult for Weibo. We got to see a couple of glimpses of that in the previous team fight, in the other dragons as well. Fortunately for Weibo, they don't have to really fight for a dragon for another 7.5 minutes or so. They can concede the third one, try to get a little bit more gold onto Light. Be curious to see whether or not he does round out into that Nash's Tooth, as you know, we can get Nash's Tooth into Azonia's, give him a little bit of safety in this, but it's going to be really tricky for him to be the sole clutch player. Breathe, the player who's been honestly pretty standout for me on this Weibo roster when, you know, the team weren't necessarily picking up clutches. He was somebody doing the best that he could. More notably, I would say, on his Cassantes and on, you know, more typically frontline oriented picks, but they have been able to rely on the Aurora and onto their top laner more so. So would like to see that step forward and make sure that he can do that once again here. Finding it very difficult, though.
By the way, that's called character development for Scout. That man would have died 4 times over in the side lane in a different world in the regular season. But it looks like this guy has been unlocked, has a little bit more of that presence of mind to not get caught out and stay alive, knowing that JDG have this lead. Hey, it's good to see out of one of the LPL's best mid laners ever. As I say that, no, it's a caster curse! The EQ comes in and Scout's in tremendous danger. He flashes away and will be able to survive. The hero's entrance comes through from Xiaohu just to protect Light. The equalizer is near burning him down, and he's immediately out of the picture as Breathe goes in with the Between Worlds. Already 1 kill into the hands of Chris. A 3-man cataclysm, but there's no follow-up onto Tian's side as Shun picks himself up a double kill, and Scout ends up playing a masterful bait in that team fight.
The Seraph Shield, the Redemption, the Command Protect keep Scout alive. His flash had been saved through teamfight after teamfight, so he's able to bait in Weibo, and then they collapse. All 3 carries of Weibo are alive, but they've got no HP, no smite, and this is a simple secure for JDG, who will find themselves so happy at the fact that they've been able to leave their mid laner, dangle him out a little bit on some string. Light here, the one who thought that he was the one getting caught out. But then on this flip side, you can see CC is looking really good. Unfortunately, the second they fail on the timing, the layering of this, they lose out on Scout. He flashes out to safety. Jun comes in, finds a stun. There's a double knockup from Xiaohu as well. And you can see this whole time, Scout just knows, I've done my job, all I need to do is recall, and then he can TP back in if necessary. But that is a masterful bait by the mid laner from JDG, and one of those reasons that we were talking about him getting all of the gold would be so important. In exactly that instance where he's able to use his level lead, use his advantage to stay alive and bait in all of Weibo.
And you could say that, you know, maybe if Scout wasn't as rich in that fight, could have ended up dying a little bit earlier. Maybe the Seraph's not available, maybe not another level, but hey, that's what you get for all the advantages that you're able to get in the side lanes this game. Getting those 2 towers, getting solo gold and XP for a tremendous amount of this game means that JDG are able to win their 3rd straight team fight, have a 6,000 gold lead with Baron buff still in their hands for another 105 seconds. The tier 2s in both the mid and the bot lane have gone down, and it's inhibitors that are next on the menu. All in the meanwhile, Shun is picking up Chemtech's soul point for his team.
Yeah, and there's no real contest from Weibo there. Maybe when the Drake goes down, they might try to find an engage, but you know, it's Pantheon with ulti, so it's going to be really tricky to find that window to make something happen. You can see Peyz T-posing almost here.
Oh my goodness, Tian taken so low after just barely missing that EQ combo. Peyz's face taking the Aurora damage and still not going down. The equalizer almost burns down Breathe, and here comes Shun to finish everything off. Light dives in the back line, he takes down Xiaohu, but will not anybody else. As JDG win yet another team fight, Breathe the only one left standing, and into the Nexus turrets they go. It should be JDG finishing off this game 1, and not before they pad the KDAs just a little bit more. Breathe goes golden to try to keep himself alive, but he makes himself an easy target. Ooh. But instead of going down, it is Shun who instead focuses his target onto the crystal that matters most. It's JDG taking game number 1 of this best of 5.
Coming out swinging here, JDG. Their composition a little bit more geared toward those 5v5s. They didn't have the greatest tools to deal with the dive that Weibo had, but fortunately, Weibo just never dove on them. They gave them the team fights that they were after, and that is a clinical game from JDG. I mean, big props to Peyz in this series so far. Game number 1, he stands strong on that Corki. He knows he's got the Mortius shield. He's got the protection of his team. He knows that everybody's going to come in swinging when that timer happens. And he was just standing literally in the face of pretty much the majority of Weibo. 4 members strong there. He just stood there, started auto-attacking, firing out spells, dodging Jarvan EQs, making sure that he's not getting comboed by Alistar. He was playing on the limits and did exactly what he needed to.
Fantastic game, I should say, overall for JDG. Peyz and Scout, the 2 main carries, one of which has been a little bit more consistent than the other. Both came to play here to open up this best of 5. And for Weibo, a composition that we said going in was very easy to execute, had a lot of easy go buttons to set up a hyper carry. Never found what exactly they were looking for, and it really ended up showing around some of those big fights around Dragons.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about flash timers for so long in that game, and with good reason, because it never really felt like they got punished, never felt like they got utilized really at all. We're talking about, okay, Xiaoxu, he has no flash, let's go top, let's punish him. Okay, Scout now mid lane, he's got no flash, let's go mid, let's punish him. Never did that happen, and Weibo just sort of asleep at the wheel, it felt like. There was a really good dive that they made early on. There was a second play that they made that was really solid, but then after that, they just completely fell flat on their feet and didn't look to make these plays or didn't successfully find any of them. And JDG did a really good job at sort of moving Scout around the map, giving him gold. And then as soon as it came to those team fights, the Orianna, the Corki, the two pieces that they needed to perform did exactly that.
And what a difference that this is from the JDG that looks so inconsistent at times throughout. Obviously, there are still more games that they must win, but this is a very good start here for this squad who, again, have had high highs at points, but they've never been able to fully piece it together throughout the full course of a season, as that is why they're in this position right now as the 6th seed in Group Ascend, as a team that, you know, is likely going to be headed to that regional qualifier, that regional finals, unless they end up, of course, winning the split. But this is a good start for them here in this best of, in a series that a lot of us predicted Weibo to come out victorious in.
You predicted Weibo to come out on top of. I've got my chips in the JDG basket.
Right.
But no, I mean, you can get to see the issues rather with that damage composition or the damage profile really that we saw from Weibo. Yeah, the distribution looks quite nice, but looking at the stats and the numbers behind it, Light did 12k damage in this game, which is you know, peanuts in a 26-minute game, right? Like, you're looking for far more than that, whereas Peyz, topping the damage charts, doing a massive amount of work on this Corki, really stepping into his own in game number 1 and sort of showcasing why I kind of feared for Weibo in this series. This disparity between the AD carries, I do just think, and I don't think anybody's going to fight me on this, that Peyz is significantly more consistent and overall a better AD carry than Light, and we need to see Light step up and try to match that, or at the very least give a little bit more to help make sure that the rest of his team, so that those areas of the map where we think that Weibo might have an advantage, can come out on top.
Somehow a quiet game for Peyz, despite the fact that he ended up doing 26k damage, the most on his team by a long shot, and ultimately winning that last team fight for his team at the end of things. He was just very consistent. As you kind of mentioned, all the pieces ahead of him were doing their job, setting up engages, and you look at this team fight, for example. I mean, he's able to free fire for so long. Eventually gets, you know, taunted up by Xiaohu, but not before the damage was already done.
And the reason he's sort of free hitting, and the reason he gets